If you never lose a case, then you are settling way too many cases.
That's Michael Cowen, acclaimed trial attorney, founding partner of Cowen Rodriguez Peacock, and the host of the Trial Lawyer Nation podcast.
I was working with an expert, and he was a race car driver once, and we were doing like some rollover testing. And he's like, yeah, I've rolled over cars lots of times. Like, what do you mean you rolled over cars? Because if you're a race car driver and you've never lost control going around a curve, then you are driving too slow.
I'm Michael Mogul, founder and CEO of CRISP, the nation's #1 law firm growth company. I've built my business through practice, not theory. CRISP started with just $500 to my name and has grown to over 8 figures in revenue over the last few years, earning a spot on the Inc. 500 list of the fastest growing private companies in America. Our approach has been to take everything we've learned about generating massive growth within our own organization and help the country's most ambitious and committed law firm owners do the same for theirs. In each episode of this podcast, I sit down with innovative market leaders from the legal industry and beyond to learn from those who thrive in the face of adversity, challenge the status quo, and define what it means to be a true game changer. I sat down with Michael Cowen to discuss keeping that hunger alive, building a firm through relationships, and the role of creativity, courage, and commitment in achieving success.
I settled a case for $14 million once, where they had offered me $11 million a month before, and I had to say no. And the conversation with my referring lawyer on that case, they're like, you're insane. How can you say no to $11 million? Because it's worth more.
That's coming up on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. Before we begin today's episode, I want to remind you that we aren't beholden to any sponsors or run any ads on this podcast. This allows us to present all of our episodes raw and unfiltered. I'm not going to push any made-to-order meal services on you or try to save you any money on your car insurance. That being said, I have one small request. If you receive any value from this podcast, please give it a 5-star review. Pay the fee so we can keep this podcast free. Michael, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you.
So, returning champion, I know you were on episode 70, so if anyone who's listening to this now has not listened to that episode, I recommend that go back and listen to that one. And you're doing a lot of things. I mean, I was just looking at this between your firm, hosting your own podcast, Trial Lawyer Nation, you do the Big Rig boot camps, you just recently wrote another book, you got the other firm, Law Giant. Like, why are you so ambitious?
Because I get bored if I'm not. Every day, I believe God gives me a certain amount of energy I can spend every day. I could spend it worrying about things I can't control. I can spend it complaining, watching TV, or I could do something positive. And I like the adventure and I like the challenge.
I love this. I mean, so you've got a fairly unique structure to the firm. I know we talked about this, when you were first on the podcast years ago, in that most of the work that you do, if not exclusively the work that you do, comes from other lawyers and them referring you cases. And I'd love to hear in terms of just how has that model developed? And then in terms of relationship building, what are some of the things you do?
That model developed in 2 ways. One, it always came natural to me. I mean, I'm just good at talking to other lawyers. From early on in my career, people would refer me cases. It started off with little fender benders that nobody else wanted. It was Allstate or State Farm, less than $500 in property damage, chiropractor only, and I was the only one dumb enough to take those on a referral. But you build relationships, and it comes natural to me to stay friendly with other lawyers, to get cases with them. It's fun to work with them. The other true reason I'm going to confess is because until recently, I was really bad at operations, and we didn't have the capital and the staying power. I tried advertising to the public. I didn't stick with it long enough. We didn't have a good intake department. We weren't really set up to handle volume. So I decided to just go all in on what I was really good at, which was the bigger case, the attorney referral, and become really good at that and step away from what I wasn't good at.
So for those that may not be familiar with your journey, how did you go from obviously graduating law school to becoming the trucking expert? Meaning, how did that obsession develop?
It was a long story. I started off on a very traditional path. I clerked for a federal judge. I went to New York City and worked at Big Law, decided that wasn't going to be for me. That wasn't where my heart was, and ended up going to work for a plaintiff's lawyer. I had worked for a couple plaintiff firms part-time during law school just to make extra money, and just decided I liked it better than doing the corporate work and didn't really want to do insurance defense. And then my boss quit on me with 3 weeks notice after I became partner as about a 3.5-year lawyer. I had no intention. I had no entrepreneurial bone in my body at that point in my life, but I ended up with a law firm, and so I had to figure it out. And then I always thought that I was like a really smart guy, a really good trial lawyer, and I remember I was having lunch with a lawyer. I was actually representing this lawyer because he was being sued for malpractice, didn't have malpractice insurance, and I'm his lawyer, so I'm supposed to be an expert. And he's making a joke because he's telling me a story. He's involved in a case where he has one plaintiff. There's some other lawyer that has another plaintiff. He goes, and this dummy, he doesn't even know what he's doing, man. He doesn't even know what the federal motor carrier safety regulations are, and he's trying to do trucking. And he starts laughing. So I laughed with him, but I didn't know what the federal motor carrier safety regulations are. And I realized that, like, okay, I have these cases that have trucks in them. I'm treating them like car wrecks, and I'm getting more money on those cases. I'm getting my car wrecks. I think I'm doing a good job. And there was no Google yet. I think I went to Alta Vista or Ask Jeeves or something and put in federal motor carrier safety regulations, and then hired my first trucking expert. Probably wasn't big enough to merit a trucking expert, but I really want to learn. I just started this journey of, if I'm going to do this, I want to be really good at it.
How long do you feel it took you from that decision to what you would deem getting really good at it?
To the extent I am really good at it, I would say 8-10 years. And there were probably points during that 8 to 10 years I thought I was really good at it, and then I would realize there was a whole nother level that I didn't even know existed, much less mastered. And I'm hoping I'm going to find 5 years from now, I'm going to tell you, man, I thought I knew what I was doing back in 2024, but my eyes have been open.
What do you think has contributed to, like, even that period or even now to the learning? Was it just trying cases? Was it, reading books?
It's everything. I had to learn to get the courage to say no to other things, because I used to do so many different kind of cases. At one point, I even did non-personal injury cases. I remember once I needed $2,500 to pay salary the next day, and someone came in with a divorce or a criminal case. If they had $2,500, I was their lawyer. Learning to say no to things so that I can become good at something. And it's really, since then, it's been everything. I read books. I talk to other people that are good. I go to seminars. And it's not just the lecturing at seminars, but it's the networking. And I've been able to become really, really good personal friends with some of the other great trial lawyers and trucking lawyers. And so, Joe Fried and I, or Michael Iserman and I, for example, will bounce ideas off each other. And they're so generous. There's really a culture within trucking I think is fairly unique in the trial lawyer world. Trucking and the old automotive product liability groups were kind of unique in that people really would share, even though they're not directly financially benefiting from your case. And so I think it's just been a combination of all that. And then really writing the book has been the deepest dive, because again, you think you know something till you're ready to write a book about it. And then you have to do an even deeper dive to learn it well enough to teach it to others.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the book. It's not the first one. I believe you said it was 5 years in the making. What compelled you to write the most recent book?
Really, I was trying to think, how can I position myself as a national leader in trucking? I'm just going to be perfectly brutally honest about it. Like, to make the next move I wanted to make, I looked at the people who I emulate, the people whose I want to have a similar practice to them. What have they done? They've written a book to get authority. It's also a good way to really make sure you have mastered your craft, because you have to learn a lot to write the book. So I decided I wanted to write a book. I probably could have written in a year to year and a half if I had more discipline. I think that I had an internal fear of the success the book could bring that probably was a source of a lot of my writer's blocks. So I would find an excuse to do anything other than work on a book in a given day. I would finally have to get a hotel room for a week at a time in the mountains, typically by myself, and say, okay, I'm at the Montage in Park City. I cannot go for a hike until I write 10 pages. Yeah. I cannot eat breakfast until I write 3 pages, and just play those games with myself, and finally got it done.
Yeah. And then when you decided finally, okay, this is the final manuscript, ship it. It hasn't been out for that long yet, but how's it been received?
It's been really well received. One of the best stories, there's a lawyer I used to work for, a really, really, really good lawyer. I have a lot of respect from him, learned a lot from him. He's getting ready for a trial, and I get a text from him with a picture from a page in my book saying, can I ask you about this? Can we set up a call? And I'm strategizing with him while he's getting ready to try a case. And this person who frankly has much bigger verdicts and more big verdicts than I do. It just felt so good for him to reach out to me. I hold nothing back. I mean, it really, if you want to know how I do a trucking case, and to the extent of these are the manuals that we use to prove our standard of care, this is the strategies we use, these are the type of questions we ask. I mean, it's all in there.
Yeah. Now, I'm sure there's going to be people listening that they think about this, like, why would he give away all of his secrets and all this knowledge and all this information? Wouldn't it just empower somebody to just try the case themselves? And, he's trying to get these trucking cases. What are your thoughts on that?
I've had a lot of people tell me that, even some of the good trucking lawyers that were always big on sharing when they read my manuscript to give the book blurb. The trial guides wanted, they want blurbs from leading lawyers in the book. They're like, you really are giving away all the secrets. And One, there are no secrets. Everything we do, the defense sees. They see us doing it. You can walk into a courtroom and watch it. Now you can go on Courtroom View Network. Texas doesn't allow them, but you can watch the great lawyers trying cases. So one, there really are no secrets. Two, I've learned there's plenty for all of us. And I want other people to do well. If I only have the capacity to do so many cases, I want everyone else to do well in their cases. And if it's the right case where I can add value, I am confident that people will bring me in. I just find the more I give, the more I get.
I want to talk about something. This is incredibly fascinating to me. I know you mentioned that most lawyers, if they're presented with an opportunity to settle a case for $1 million, they take it. But you, in many cases, argue against that of, you can really maximize the value of that. How do you balance that risk versus reward? Because, again, I'd say probably 90+% of lawyers would not turn down $1 million offer, but you push it up much higher, sometimes $5 million and beyond.
Yeah, well, one, you will never get more than $1 million unless you say no to $1 million, unless it becomes easy. Now, it becomes easier when you've had the success. It was a lot scarier the first time I did it, but you just have to do some self-talk and believe in yourself. It really helps if you focus group the case and you know that it's more likely than not to get substantially more than $1 million. I'm really leaning into this big data thing now where we can run it past hundreds of things. I have a mediation next week, actually, and I know they're going to offer me several $1 million. I think my case is worth more, but I'm still running a big data study to make sure, because I also have a duty to my client. And I've had to have that conversation. I was an associate. It wasn't my call, but where we had over $1 million on the table and we lost. And they're like, well, Mike, you speak Spanish. You go talk to the widow. That was not fun. But at the same time, there's many cases where we've gotten substantially over. There's one Mallory and I tried. We got $1 million over what our demand was the prior Friday, because when we got into trial, we just were kicking their butt, and our client did so much better than we expected. And so, 4 days into trial, they said, oh, good news, they'll pay your offer, your last demand. And we're like, well, that was last week. We're not willing to take that anymore. A lot of times on a big case, they are testing you, and when you go to mediation, they're not there to pay you the value of the case. They're there to see if you and your clients have the guts to hold out for the value of the case. They'll offer you $1 million. Then they'll make you sit on it for a month. Then they'll offer you $2 million. Then they'll make you sit on it. If you're wanting 5, 10, 15 million plus, until you are at the courthouse and you've said no and you're not blinking and you're actually trying the case, that top money does not get on the table.
I know you talk about the 3 C's, if you can elaborate on that.
Yeah, the 3 C's are creativity, courage, and commitment. And I came up with it earlier this year. One of the things we're doing for marketing is we're generating these case studies. So like lots of people say, well, we got this big result. We got 10 million, we got 12 million, whatever it is. But they don't tell you how they did it. And so I'm thinking, let me share how we did it. And one, people might find it useful. And two, it just provides more useful information if you decide whether you want to work with us or not. This is kind of what we do and how we do it. And so I had to think of what was it that led to this result. And so creativity, you have to go in there and get creative. You have to think of things that other people don't think of. You have to spend the time. How do I tell the visual story? Because so many people are visual. Do I need to create 3D models? Do I need to do a computer animation, or do I need to do a reenactment, buy a tractor trailer and run it through different scenarios and see what the view is? Then courage. You have to have the courage, one, to spend the money to do all that stuff. You have to have the courage to say no. I settled a case for $14 million once where they had offered me $11 million a month before, and I had to say no. And the conversation with my referring lawyer on that case, and they were an insurance defense firm that referred me the case, and they're like, you're insane. How can you say no to $11 million? Because it's worth more. So you have to have the courage, and you have to have the commitment. It's so easy to have great ideas, but to actually commit to doing the daily work, to actually do the work to achieve the result. And it's hard. For me, that's the hardest part. I'm a quick start, as you all know from the testing y'all have done of me. So coming up with ideas is really easy for me. I have to have a team around me and a really good assistant that holds me accountable for me to do the commitment part.
You're not afraid to invest. And speaking of which, the plane, that was obviously an investment. How did you justify the business case for that?
There is no business case for a private jet. I first started off with a 4-seater propeller plane. I was living in Brownsville, Texas, which is a small town on the Mexican-American border. Most of my cases were not in Brownsville, Texas. So I was spending 4 to 5 nights on the road every week. We had a 2-year-old at home. My wife's like, I can't do this. So instead of having to drive from Brownsville to San Antonio the night before for a hearing, I could get up in the morning and fly there and fly right back and be home for lunch. And then as we became more successful, and frankly, as our geographic reach grew, where we had more things out of state, where the propeller plane didn't make much sense anymore, we moved up into like a smaller, ultralight jet, or very light jet called the Eclipse. And then eventually we moved into like a real jet. I guess the business case for it, the only one I could really make is that it's cheaper than a divorce, because I am able many times to get up in the morning, I take my son to school, and then I fly to another state. I do deposition or court hearing or meetings in another state, and then I'm home for dinner. I also put a value of my time with my wife and my time with my kids at several $1,000s an hour. But if you look at it purely like, okay, if I flew Delta, like I flew here on my plane here to Atlanta, I could have flown Delta for much less of the cost. And I thought about it, like next week I'm going to come back out here and I'm flying Delta. But there are things I want to do on Tuesday that I would not have been able to do on Tuesday before I left had I caught a Delta flight. I wanted to have dinner with another Chris person, Eric Chafin, another Chris client who's a wonderful person. Well, I either would have had to have not done the things in the morning I needed to get done, or I would have had to pass on dinner with Eric. To me, having dinner with Eric's worth a couple $1,000.
Did you tell him that?
I haven't. I guess up here, but yeah, I would be willing, and not because we did any kind of business, just because I'm lucky in a point where a couple $1,000s is not going to make a big difference in my life right now, whereas having a quality moment with someone I care about is worth a lot to me.
And looking back, even when you first started the firm, I imagine there were milestones that took place where you're like, okay, I think we're moving in the right direction. And I imagine the jet was probably a milestone at some point. What were the other milestones?
Your first verdict over $1 million, the first time the firm actually had $1 million in revenue, hitting an 8-figure revenue, hitting an 8-figure recovery. At one point, those were the metrics. To me now, like a big thing is a case will come in. I will know a little bit about it when it comes in. It will go to another lawyer at the case. I will do my monthly meetings with that lawyer. We may have a few words about the case during those monthly meetings, and it will resolve for multiple 7 figures without me doing anything on it.
Yep.
To me, that is a huge milestone. It means I've put together the right people, the right systems. So I think that's another one. Seeing that maturity of a case, being able to hire a real COO, where I think I'm a really good lawyer. I don't think I'm a fabulous business person. Again, consistency from day to day is not my strong point. Coming up with good ideas and being in the moment and being creative, that I'm really good at. Holding other people accountable and having to have hard conversations with them, I'm getting better at it because I have to, but it's not something that comes naturally to me and it drains me. Being able to, and y'all helped me finding a real COO who has scaled businesses before and knows how to run a business. To me, that was a huge milestone.
And I want to talk about, I guess, 2 things to dig into that. One is, what have been the strategies that you use just even to scale the lawyers and scale your team? I mean, I know we were talking about Mallory's been with the firm for over a decade, and I'm sure there's people listening to say, look, I'd love for somebody else to do some of the work at a high level, but they struggle to go out and find those people. And how have you approached it?
It's a lot of investment of time and money. So we do a lot of training. We do attorney training every Friday. Plus, I bring in at least once a year, usually more than once a year, we bring in different outside people to work with. So it could be a trial consultant. Last year, we all went out to a truck driving school and learned how to drive tractor trailers and put out triangles, and mentoring and knowing while you're doing all this that 90% of the people you hire are not going to be there in 5 years. But it's worth all the money for the one that is. And, I've got a really good team of people right now that are, good lawyers that care about what they do, that are part of the team and are committed to it. And, it's totally worth all the expense, but it does take time. It takes expense. It takes development of processes and procedures. And I've had people argue, well, law's law, we're not running a McDonald's. And I say, yeah, but if you're not thinking about, okay, we have like certain depositions that are going to be automatically requested and noticed, without the lawyer having to even asked for it to get done. The paralegal is trained and monitored to make sure these things go out, they get scheduled. Because when you're not worrying about the little things, then you can focus on being creative. If you're worried about trying to remember, did we send out interrogatories? Do I need to take a deposition? Oh my gosh, I have a deadline coming up. Now I have to panic because I didn't think of this stuff in advance. But when you have the systems and processes in place to do the little things, then you can use your mind on the big things.
Yeah. And the other side of it, I know you love trying cases, but on the business side of the practice, what got you to the point of hiring a COO, right? And then what impact has that made for you?
Oh, it's been a huge impact. Well, the 2 things had to happen. The first one happened a number of years before. Is I had to decide in my mind that it was okay to have a business and it was okay to make money and it was okay for me to have things, because I did not start off that way. It was like law is a profession. It's all about the client. Money is almost like a necessary evil, but the money will come because you're going to hit some giant case and get rich. It's not that you're going to run a business that really works. And I think I self-sabotaged myself, made a lot of bad deals with people because I didn't believe in my heart that I deserved it. And I had to do a lot of personal work to get past that. I'm probably the only person whose therapist ever told him to buy a Bentley. which is bizarre, but it's just because she's just like, well, could you afford it? I said, yeah, but I'm not. Well, why wouldn't you? Well, I'm not that kind of person. What do you mean? Well, I don't deserve that. Well, why don't you deserve it? If you work hard, yeah. Do you want it? Yeah. We'll buy it.
Yep.
So that was part of it. And then, I had to come to the realization for many, many years, I focused so much of my energy on where I was weak. I'm like, okay, I'm good at the trial stuff. I'm not good at the business. So I need to work on being a better manager, on developing systems myself. I was even like programming. We used to use needles. We use something else now, but actually sitting there and typing out and programming in the step-by-step systems and reminders that people would get. And, just saying it's okay to focus on my strengths. And there's people that actually enjoy doing the things that I'm not good at. And then frankly, I had to get to the point where I could afford to hire someone that was at her level. I mean, even 5 years ago, Jan, who's our brilliant COO, I didn't have the money to hire her 5 years ago. And frankly, I didn't have a business that would have interested her 5 years ago. So, you kind of have to grow into it.
And so since that point, I guess, how has that influenced how you spend your time?
It's really freed me up. I'm spending 85 to 90% of the time doing what I love. I still have to have some hard conversations because like lawyer to lawyer, with a senior lawyer, it's got to, especially about a legal matter, it's got to be me. And if there's an issue, most of my conversations with referral partners are positive, but when there's an issue, then I have to be the one to have those conversations. But most of what I do is I am working with my lawyers to come up with creative ideas on their cases. So we do a lot of brainstorming sessions that I work on. I am out there hustling, meeting with people, trying to bring in more work for the firm, being the face of the firm. And then I am working on our 5 biggest cases and trials. And it's a great life.
I know some people have this vision of making $100 million, and your vision is to give away $100 million. If you can elaborate on that.
Well, I also want to make it. And so we were working on, we did we worked with Chris, we did a vision day. We came up with our 1 year and 5 year vision for the firm. And to meet our 5 year vision, in the next 5 years, we need to bring in a little over $100 million in attorney's fees. And my marketing message to referral partners is, I want to make $100 million. Why would they care? What's in it for them? It's like, okay, you want to get rich. What does that have to do with me? So we said, let's turn it around. Let's make our message, we want to pay out $100 million in referral fees, which then should generate more than $100 million in fees for us. And so let's make our marketing message about what we will do for you, the customer.
And how has that been received? And if you could talk about even the strategy there, because when this happens, when you're writing a referral check, you've been posting these on social media.
Well, the potential referring lawyers love it. Some of my competitors have talked some shit to me, which means I'm doing it right. And then I ran into some fraternity brothers from college who were not lawyers at a football game last weekend. They're asking me, what do I need to do to get a big check from you?
You can tell them exactly what they need to do.
Well, unfortunately, if you were a lawyer, you could send me a case. Yeah. I'd get in trouble if I wrote you $1 million check for sending me a case as a non-lawyer. But
right. They just need to go to law school first.
Yeah.
So interesting. So when you're posting these checks, I mean, these are like these 7-figure checks. And just for those listening, obviously you're not putting the name of the lawyer that you're sending the check to.
No, we just I put the amount and I put the date because I want people to know that we're not doing old checks. And these are like things that are really going out today.
Yeah. And there's something about that. I mean, just the fact that it makes it real, right? I mean, because you can talk about it and say, here's the vision, but then it's the proof, right? Like here's the actual check that's going out. Obviously, if you're writing a check of 7 figures plus, the implication there is that you just obviously just had a verdict, or settled a case for a very high value.
Yeah.
And it shows that obviously those that are working with you are benefiting.
Absolutely. And the messaging has to be, about how grateful we are to be able to write this check, how grateful we are for our referral partners. Because again, one, it has to be true. If you resent writing that check, you will not get the next one. You have to have this abundance mentality, and you have to remember what all that referral partner had to do to get that case, how much money they spent marketing, how many cases that they screened, how many calls they had to take, how many crappy cases that they went through to get you that one good case, and be grateful to them. And then it brings, success begets success if you have the abundance mindset.
And if you're open to sharing, I know they don't just get the check. You also give them something else.
Yeah, anything that's $1 million or more, any recovery, not just fee, but any recovery that's $1 million or more, we actually make a trophy. If it's a trucking case, it's like a crystal tractor trailer. If not, it's some kind of plaque that just has their name on it. So, for example, we have one, Tihadina Legal Group, for your great work resulting in a $17.5 million verdict. And it doesn't have my name on it. It only has their name on it. Because again, if I put something like Cal Rodriguez Peacock presents this award to you for giving us a case, they're not going to put that out in public. But if it just says their name on it, they put it in their lobby, they take pictures, they post it to their socials. but they remember who gave it to them. And I see those things still in their lobby or their office 5-6 years later.
Yeah, I love it. And in the spirit of ultimately giving back, there's some of the other things that you do, the other ambitions, like the Big Rig Boot Camp. I know you guys did one recently. If you can share what that's about.
Yeah, again, it's actually one of our 3 core values at the firm is we share what we know. We constantly seek to learn and improve. We share what we know, and you can edit this out if you need to, but we fight hard without being assholes. Our 3 core values. And it's important to us that we share. And it's part of our marketing strategy. It's like, we're gonna prove it to you. We're not just gonna say that we're great at stuff. We're gonna show you exactly what we do. If you want to take it and run with it and do your case without us, that's fine. We have plenty. But what better proof that we're the referral partner than you just to see us actually perform, to see what we can do and how we do it and how we present. Because speaking on stage is very similar to speaking in a courtroom. And so, I do the Big Rig Boot Camp. I do every July in San Antonio. And that's kind of a national seminar that we put on. We have some small charge. I think we like $250 or something like that. We lose money on it. I spent $250,000 putting on, and I think we brought in like $60,000 in fees. And the only reason we charge actually is because when it was free, we had about a 25% no-show rate. Just for a couple $100, it's like a 5% no-show rate. And just, it would sell out, and then we'd have all these empty seats, and we'd have other people we had to say no who wanted to come. I'm also doing one with the Trial Lawyers University, a Big Rig Masterclass, totally different program. I guess I like creating content in Las Vegas in October. I don't know when this is going to run, but if it runs before October, we're putting that one on too. And then McAllen, Texas is one of my home markets. We actually do a free seminar. It's really Texas specific. What we do is we survey our referral partners and we find out what are your biggest pain points right now legally. So sometimes there's like the new tort reform law passed and they need to figure out how are they going to address a certain issue. And then we put on a seminar that addresses their pain points, and we do that for free. And that one has a really good reception.
So let's say somebody reads the book, they go to a Big Rig Boot Camp, they've been following your content, they listen to the podcast, and they start taking an interest in trucking, and they happen to land a trucking case. At what point, if you look at it, and I'm sure you have the data on this, but the cost benefit of them trying that case themselves, having some level of baseline knowledge, versus them referring the case to someone like yourself in terms of the actual financial return?
So a couple things. It partially depends on what their resources are. I mean, do you have the money that it takes to fund the case yet? Do you have the experience level and the knowledge where you're not having, you can be in the moment and react, because there is a learning curve to this stuff. You can go look it up in the book, but when you're in deposition or trial, you don't have time to get out the book and go through the index. And then how big is the case? And so honestly, if you have a case where the client went to physical therapy for 6 weeks and got 100% better, there's a limited amount of value I could add to that case. If you have a really big case, a death, a catastrophic injury, even a back surgery, we can usually add enough value to that case. The other thing, this is awful, but until you've tried and got a few verdicts, they're not going to pay you full value. They're going to test you. And so on those kind of cases, you typically, until you go get some 7 and 8 figure verdicts and recoveries, are probably better off. The other thing is you get to learn. I mean, with us, we're an open book. So people are welcome to come in and attend our strategy meetings, attend our depositions, attend our hearings. We don't hide anything. And we have lawyers that come in, they work with us for a few years. And then what tends to happen, it's like how Alex Begum and I, who are now partners in another law firm in New Mexico. When we first started, he sent me a bunch of stuff. And then over the years, he and his lawyers got better and better and better. So cases that they used to send me, they do themselves. But now the cases that he does bring me in on are like fabulous, huge mega cases. And so, if someone wants to refer me for multiple 7-figure cases a year instead of 20 6-figure cases, I'll take that deal all day long and not resent the fact that they don't need me anymore in those. And so I thought if I'm not actually providing value, then I shouldn't be brought in.
Yeah. And then what about the podcast? I mean, this has been one of the longer running, more consistent podcasts, legal podcasts out there, certainly that I've seen. You still do it, I think, at least twice a month?
Twice a month, every month, the 15th and then the last day of the month.
Yeah. How many years?
It is, it's 6.5 years now.
Wow.
We just did episode 162, just launched over the weekend.
Yeah. What's been the biggest lesson you've taken away from that? Just the whole podcast experience?
It has been such a blessing for me because honestly, the listeners are just along for the ride. I am finding people that I want to learn from, and then I am asking them the things that I want to know. And then it provides value for me. So I figure it provides value for me, it provides value for the listeners. But the consistency has been the biggest thing. If you're going to do a podcast, and it's actually why I did it. I started on a lark. I didn't even know what podcasts were. Somebody I knew was on the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast, and I grew up watching wrestling as a kid. So I listened to that and found out there was a podcast. I was training for a marathon at the time, so I had lots of like long, boring runs. And so I was looking for a good trial lawyer podcast. And at the time, I couldn't find one. There were some that were totally self-promotional and didn't provide any value to me. And there were other ones that were really good, but they'd be really good for like 2 or 3 months. And then that 4 months would go by and maybe they'd do another episode. And then within a year or so, they just peter out and they wouldn't have any. So I decided just to talk to my team, said, we're going to do a podcast. I know enough people in the industry. I think I can get some listeners. Maybe people will listen, maybe they won't. But if nothing else, I'll get to talk to all these people and learn from them. So let's go try it out. But if we're going to do it, first, let's wait till we have 10 episodes in the can before we launch. And just stay on me, because I'm a quick start. I'm not a good follow-through person. So stay on me. It's your job to make sure that we have an episode recorded, never miss an episode. And luckily, with the help of my team, we've done that.
Yeah, and I mean, you cover a lot of really interesting topics. I mean, I know you had one podcast recently talking about like big data. What role do you think that's going to play? I mean, it's already here. It's not just the future.
It is transforming the practice. And it is, we have been going on guesswork, and it's really been a game of chicken. On big cases, it's been who's going to blink first, because no one really knew what it was worth. And so, how much of it is just your ego? How much of it is your fear as far as driving value? And because no one wants to guess wrong. I mean, if they offer you $10 million and you try the case and you get $5 million and the jury all gives you a hug and they think that they just did you the biggest favor in the world and you just left $5 million on the table, that's a really bad day and a really hard client conversation. Especially now I'm going to charge you 40% of that $5 million when we just lost $5 million. And so, having big data, because focus groups are such a small number of people, the traditional focus groups, they're valuable, but they're not predictive because your sample size is too small. But now that we're able to get out to 350, 450 people, that is transformational because now we have some better predictions. And so, we're doing that on all our bigger cases now.
So for someone listening, I imagine they're going to be intrigued. Where would you even get started to learn more about that?
John Campbell is one person that is like leading the charge, John and his wife, Alicia, and they have a website along with Sean Claggett, I think, called juryball.com. Jessica Brylo, I'm also working with. I like working with Jessica. She actually has the Campbells run the data for her, but she also helps us put it together. And so we're working with Jessica on it too. I'm sure some of the other trial consultants are going to start doing it, but that's who I'm working with.
Do you have any, any story you can share with just kind of the impact that's made since you've started leveraging it?
Yeah, there is a case that we have. It's an ongoing case. I can only give so much in the details, but we had no idea how to value it. It's a different kind of injury than what we're used to seeing because it left a partial amputation, but it also functionally the person's doing very well now, and we didn't really know what the case was worth, and so we just did. There's a mini big data study. They call it medium data, called Fred, where you can just do a real quick and dirty. And it totally opened our eyes. We would have totally undervalued that case. It came in at a multiple 7-figure number, and we were thinking that if we could get to $1 million, we'd be lucky in 750. Like when we discussed it in the office, we thought, well, maybe 750 to $1 million, but for $7,500, we can run the 75-person focus group. Let's do that. Yeah. And I'm so glad we did because that will more than pay for itself. Because if they won't pay us now what we think is worth, I'm going to go try it.
So do you think this will be the end of focus groups as we know it?
No, absolutely not. Because focus groups are really valuable early on, especially to find out what matters in your case. What are the themes? What does the jury want to know? Where are your gaps? And developing the case. Big data you can really only run once the case is developed, because until you know what your themes and story is going to be, what the evidence is, what the defense is going to say, it's not predictive. So focus groups early, big data for evaluation, and then we do a kind of focus group towards the end, which isn't for research purposes. We practice our opening, we practice our jury selection, and make sure you leave the room, you have someone else talk to people. Did they understand you? Were you persuasive? What questions were left? And that's not a big data type thing. That's in person.
So before you try a case, I'm just curious, like at what moment do you know that you're ready, or do you feel that you're ready?
So a trial lawyer is a combination of a giant ego over a huge pit of insecurity. So part of me is never ready. Part of me never thinks that there's always something else you could have done. But part of me also has done this long enough to know that as long as I know my story and I'm present in the moment, that it's all going to be just fine. So I do know that I always take off a full day during the week before trial, usually the weekend before, but sometimes the week before if I have to go like out of town and meet with witnesses that weekend before. I try to sleep now. I try to make sure I exercise. I think part of that's just the confidence from knowing that it's the big picture that matters and having a really good team where I can get studied up on the details well before trial so that I'm not there cramming.
It's funny, like last night over dinner, a bunch of us were talking about some of them had run Ironmans, and they were on like their third race or their fourth race, and they said, well, the first one that I did, I didn't eat enough. And then the second one I did, I ate too much, right? And then by the third one, it was kind of there, right? And it seems like the type of thing that as you do more of it, you start to get a better sense of just self-awareness.
Yeah, for me, something happened at about 100 trials, which I know sounds discouraging. I mean, actually, something happened at 10, but something really big happened at about 100. Part of it has been I've done a lot of mindset work, both through a coach, through a therapist. I've just done a lot on making trial enjoyable and being in the moment. But there's just nothing like repetition. And for me, it's both having one big so you know it's possible, because I think that's important, and having lost and survived. And having lost big, having lost with a big offer on the table, having lost with multiple six figures invested in the case, and knowing that it's going to be okay. Like the world will not end. Those things, you just have to experience them. And maybe you can be Jerry Spence and go a whole career without losing. Well, actually, never lost a criminal case. He's lost civil cases, but not for decades. But that's not me. And I also think if you never lose a case, then you are settling way too many cases, because I was working with an expert, and he was a race car driver once, and we were doing like some rollover testing. And he's like, yeah, I've rolled over cars lots of times. Like, what do you mean you rolled over cars? Because if you're a race car driver and you've never lost control going around a curve, then you are driving too slow.
Yeah.
You will not find out where your limit is until you roll it over. And same for trial lawyers. You do not know your limit until you go try a case. You have to get in there and just take some swings. And
well, and speaking of limits, some lawyers limit themselves to one law firm, but yep, you have two now. So let's talk about Law Giant.
Alex Begum, who's a really good friend of mine, and he and I have been doing cases on a referral partnership basis for over 20 years. He'd been after me actually for years he saw a market opening in New Mexico. At the time, I was licensed in New Mexico and he wasn't yet, and he wanted to partner with me. When he first brought it up, frankly, I didn't have the extra dough. I mean, it was a significant financial investment in him telling me, like, you're going to make a very, very large investment for 3 years with no return for the first 3 years. Because if we're going to come in the market, we're going to be top 2 advertisers, and we're going to go in there and build our share. And that means we're going to be putting in a bunch of money. And then operationally, I wasn't ready to add a second business yet. I was still really working on my primary business. But I finally got to the point where I could do it. And part of it is I just wanted the adventure of doing it. Part of it, frankly, is although I love my referral partners and I welcome them, having cases where I don't have, a big part of the 40-50% of the case going to someone else. But a bigger part of it is just, I have a son that wants to go to law school now, Mallory, who while she's building her own brand, having a firm that could survive me, where it's not all based on people wanting to work with Michael Cowen or Michael Cowen's brand, but the firm itself has its own brand, was intriguing to me. And the other thing is I just have to try new things. I get bored really easy.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, what's that experience been like? Definitely as a grind, entering a new market, especially with a new brand. It's definitely been over a year now.
It's where we just passed our third year. We're finally not in the red anymore. We have a settlement that's about to fund that will put us into profitability for the first time in those 3 years. And we can go, so going from a 7-figure loss to, we're not going to actually pay ourselves any money. We're going to put it right back in. But it's been a great learning experience. It's, Alex is such a great marketer. He is really good on a lot of operational and client-facing service. I've learned a lot from him. Actually, I thought we did a pretty good job taking care of our clients at the main firm. But now we're taking those things back and apply those to get even better customer service. And so we're really combining the great marketing and customer service things that Alex has with our high-end litigation. And, I'm mentoring and training the litigators we have there in New Mexico. So it's been a really fun experience. I'm not going to say there's some days where I'm, writing those checks, knowing that it's going to be another year or two before I get anything back was fun. And then, I've still, no matter how much you say your partner is going to take care of all this part of the firm, there's like, he'll be on vacation and there'll be a problem in pre-lit that I have to deal with. Or our integrator for the firm, actually, the COO that you helped us find is also the integrator for that firm. So I do hear about and get involved in more of the little things, but it's actually been good for me because it's just taught me a lot about running a business and then learning from Alex. We've been really good friends, but I really admire him so much and what he's built up, and being able to be in the trenches with him and learning from him has been great.
Yeah. And it's amazing to have that long-term outlook. It's not like the 3 C's, the courage, commitment, and creativity, don't just apply to trial skills, right? It's also ultimately to a business. And Michael, I'm curious, if you could go back, like if you were starting your legal career over today, Is there anything you would do differently, or what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot I would do differently. One, I would have not taken over the law firm when my old boss quit and scrambled for a long time and really was kind of adrift in the wilderness for a while, just trying to survive, trying to figure things out. I would have started off working for a really, really good trial lawyer and tried to bank some money, but try to really build up the skills and learn as much as I can, not just about the trial work, but about how they ran their business. And I would have started that a lot earlier. I would have started the business consulting earlier. I definitely would have really worked on the processes and finding the right consultants, although there are different people that are right at different levels. I mean, there's some people that I've worked with before that were great on taking me from 6 figures to 7 figures, and without them, I wouldn't be where I am today, and I'll be eternally grateful to them. But they weren't the right people to take me from 7 figures to 8 figures. I mean, frankly, until I worked with Chris Bex, I got within 100 grand of it, but I could never quite break that 8-figure mark until part of it I had to hang out with people that had and learn from them. Part of it is I just had to get the tools and people in place that could get me there. So yeah, I would definitely have started on the investing on the business consulting side and the business side of it earlier. And then I definitely would have, focused more on my strengths and finding other people to cover my weaknesses instead of trying to work so much my weaknesses.
Yeah. I love it. It's interesting. I know you mentioned the other day that you're at a good place, you're ambitious but content. Yeah. Right. And I'm just curious, what's driving you today?
The thought that I have potential that's unmet. Financially, there's nothing that I want to do that I can't do now. I could quit working today and I've got enough banked up where I'd have to sell the jet. I couldn't keep flying a private jet, but I have enough banked up where I could go on nice vacations and live in a nice house and do everything I want to do. But it's not about the money. Other than I want to make more money because it's a neat thing to do and because it's kind of a way to keep score and it's a challenge. But I just feel like, God has given me this energy. He's given me this potential. He's given me this brain. I should do it. And then I meet these other people, and it's not a jealousy thing, but it's an inspiration thing. I've been here at a Chris Bex meeting, and so I've been in a room with some incredible, high-achieving people. And it inspires me. If they can do it, why can't I? And it's fun. It's fun to get a win. Whether it's a win in trial or a win in business, I get off on that endorphin.
If anyone follows you on Facebook, they see your post with the Runkeeper app, right? So you running, whether it's outside or indoors, and I guess what's been your approach towards just health and longevity? It seems like it's something you've gotten more serious about in recent years.
It has. That's been a struggle for me. I mean, before I was a plaintiff lawyer, I was pretty healthy. And then it's in the family, but I also gained a bunch of weight when I ended up having to have my own firm, and I was struggling. And, part of it is just I was working all the time. Part of it I was eating emotions. The highest I ever weighed myself at was 336 pounds. I'm sure there were times when I was heavier than that. I just didn't want anything to do with a scale. And it had been a challenge. So I think 2012 is when I first started 2011, 2012 is when I first started trying to work on it. And I lost 85 pounds, but then the business was falling apart. So then I dove back to the business and I gained all but 10 pounds of it back. And then twice more, I've lost, 70, 75 pounds, and it all came back. And really 3 years ago, I just made a commitment. One, I saw, okay, I'm getting the financial success. I don't like how I look. I don't like how I feel. And I'm not going to live long enough to really enjoy it, to enjoy my kids, to enjoy the life that I have. And so I want to make a commitment to myself to get healthier. I hired a coach. I work with a company called mybodytutor.com. So I have a woman, Coach Tracy, who calls me 6 days a week. I don't need her that much when I'm on, but she's really helpful when I slipped. There have been times when I have, gained back 10, 20 pounds and then had to lose it again. But the overall trajectory has been down. And I'm down about 91 pounds from my heaviest. I still want to lose another 50 or so. I'm running on a more regular basis, doing weights again. Part of it's just caring about myself, but part of it is just realizing, okay, I've got the courage and the creativity. I'm not real good with the commitment, so I need to hire people to help me with the commitment.
Yeah. Yeah. And has this, even this journey, the health journey, has that helped you in the business, and has it helped you in the courtroom?
Absolutely. One, I'm just more alive. I'm more energetic. I feel better about myself. I think it's not so much that I've lost weight, it's that I care enough about myself to eat better. Even I've done a lot of work with fasting, and fasting is more about learning when is a feeling real and when is it an illusion. So a lot of hunger is an illusion. A lot of hunger is because I feel like eating because I'm emotionally triggered, or because it's noon and we're supposed to eat lunch at noon. And so you go 3 or 4 days without eating and you realize it goes away. Not that you want to stop eating for the rest of your life, but it's okay, I have more control over this than I thought I did. And then you get more control over other parts of your life. So I think part of it is, when you look better in the courtroom, you are more dynamic with some jurors. But I also think when you care enough about yourself to take care of yourself, that carries over into you're able to be present, you're able to connect with other people. Because if you're insecure and you don't really love yourself, then that energy carries over into your interactions with other people. I mean, if you want to really do trial work and be really good, start with yourself. Start on the inside before you work on your trial skills. If you can learn to like love yourself, take care of yourself, then you'll put in the work, and then you'll be more alive and you'll be communicating and connecting better with jurors in the courtroom.
Do you believe, and I'm half joking when I say this, but lawyers who are willing to commit and stick to a 5-day fast are more likely to say no to a $1 million offer?
Probably so. Absolutely. Yep. Because it's deferred gratification.
Yeah.
I'm saying no to the $1 million offer because I know I can get more later on.
Love it. So Michael, as we come to a close, this being the Game Changing Attorney podcast, what does being a game changer mean to you?
To me, being a game changer means having the courage to do things that are different and to try different things and to not just do what everyone else does or what everyone else thinks you should do, having the creativity to come up with new things to do, and we have the commitment to actually follow through and get them done.
I want to give a huge thank you to Michael Cowen for taking the time to join us again on the Game Changing Attorney podcast. If you found this episode valuable, here are 3 free ways that I can help you grow your law firm. Number 1, download the first chapter of my book absolutely free at GameChangingAttorney.com. Number 2, you can shoot me a text at 404-531-7691 and I'll answer any question that you've got for me. And finally, number 3, if you can leave this podcast a 5-star review, it'll help us gain access to more influential thought leaders and bring their lessons learned here to you. For more information on our interview with Michael Cowen, see the show notes for this episode in your podcast app or visit legalpodcast.com.